folks, Roland Martin here. We are broadcasting live from Los Angeles at the site of XQ America Live. Well, the next hour, we're going to be talking about education, the importance of it, but also how you can also be a difference maker when it comes to rethinking, how we rethink high school, but also how we impact our children, elementary school, middle school, and high school as well. Over the next hour, you're going to hear from a number of people, including Ruslan Ali, who is with XQ America. You might remember her. Of course, worked for the Department of Education. Also, Naomi Campbell is also will be here talking about how important education reform is to her as well. Plus, Dr. Steve Perry, of course, he has several charter schools in Connecticut, also working with Diddy in Harlem. He'll join us to talk about students and do they reach a point where they literally stop learning? He's going to give you some research that they have uncovered in their various schools. We'll also talk about Donald Trump, his education budget. They dropped the budget this week. Massive cuts in the Department of Education. How will that impact our children, especially African Americans? We'll talk with Tiffany Lofton, who leads the Youth and College Division of the NAACP. And so, folks, over the next hour, it's going to be a jam-packed show from LA. It's time for us to bring the funk. Roland Martin Unfiltered, the special edition of SQ America. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, we are here in Los Angeles with the folks from XQ America for the XQ America live event taking place tonight. Why is this important? Because XQ America is all about education, causing us to rethink how we educate our children. And so they've had some major initiatives that we've covered over the last couple of years. And so we want to talk about, of course, what they are doing and also what this event is about, and also give you some critically important information when it comes to your children. Education is, as we say on my show all the time, the civil rights issue of the 21st century. And so for so long for African Americans, dating back to even before slavery, it is about how do we educate our children. And so we can take this thing all the way through, of course, Jim Crow, where we are today, where you have today, for the first time, majority of kids in public schools are black and brown. And the question is, are our school systems failing them, and how can we reverse that? We look at some of the education numbers, dismal, but the question is, can we improve it? We have experts tonight who are going to say, absolutely, we can. So over the next hour, we'll be talking about that. We also want to hear from you. I'll be monitoring the feeds, of course, folks who are watching on YouTube, Periscope, as well as Facebook. I'll be seeing your comments. You can also tweet those to me as well. I'll have that up as well. And so we got 4 different devices going at one time to get your comments. But right now, though, let's get right into it. I got my 3 of my guests right here. So I want to start, first off, to my left, we have, of course, Eric Whalen, co-founders of Da Vinci Rise, also Carrie Croft with us as well, and Nadeska Alexis, host of SuperSchool Live. Now, first off, what is Da Vinci Rise? What is that?
Yeah, so Da Vinci Rise is a brand new high school here in Los Angeles. We're in our second year, and we were created to specifically meet the needs of homeless, foster, and probation youth, who, even within this kind of larger conversation we're having about educational inequity and students who aren't being served, they are even more likely to be neglected in education, have more difficulties and challenges that they face in terms of accessing an equitable education, a rigorous curriculum. And so we worked with students to create a high school to better meet their needs.
So it's your second year. So
yes.
Are you part of the traditional public school system? Are you a charter school? Are you a private school? Exactly what kind of school?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're a charter school.
Yes.
We're a charter school.
Okay, and so the genesis of that. And so where did the idea start from? Did you look at what the problems were and then say, you know what, we need something that's specially created for this population?
Yeah, so Aaron and I both started in the classroom as high school teachers, and we were kind of seeing similar issues on opposite sides of the
High
country.
school teachers here in Los Angeles.
I was here in Los Angeles, and
I'm born and raised from here, but I was in Miami.
Okay.
yeah, and so started seeing similar issues, and then our paths crossed about 4 or 5 years into being into the classroom. We started having conversations and realizing that we really wanted to work with students to create a better experience for them, one that was really kind of fitting the school around their needs rather than force fitting them into a system that wasn't made for them to begin with.
Now, such schools are not out of the norm. I mean, when I was, I grew up in Houston Independent Public School System, and unfortunately, they always call such schools alternative schools. And so, why did you choose this name as opposed to something that sounds like it's sort of reform school?
Yeah.
I think a huge piece of the puzzle is that we're trying to provide equity for students who have never seen their needs being met. And that is often why. So in thinking about how to best meet their needs and best kind of make them feel empowered and wanting to go to school and wanting to feel like they belong there, we have to change the narrative. We have to stop saying that you failed out because you didn't meet our needs as educators and say that we actually failed you by not meeting your needs as students, as people, as human beings, and thinking about kind of the hierarchy of needs. If students are hungry, if they don't have stability in their household, if they don't have what they need, then obviously they're not going to be able to perform and learn. And so how do we reverse that? How do we use our systems and kind of interact together to make sure that they have that?
And what are you specifically seeing? The difference between the students you serve and versus other students. First of all, how many students in your school?
We have about 160 students right now across 2 locations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what is the chief difference that you see in those the students you serve versus students in other traditional schools?
Well, I think to your point earlier, we already know that Black and brown students already have more difficulty accessing equitable education just by virtue of the schools in their neighborhoods, and also students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. And then our students, in addition to that, those students are disproportionately represented in the foster system, in the probation system, in housing instability. And so for a lot of our students, they've had a great deal of transiency. They've attended sometimes upwards of 4 or 5 different high schools. Our students may have 5 to 6 different placements, just housing placements over the course of the year. And so they were experiencing pretty significant disruptions in their educational journeys.
All right, I want to bring in Nadeska here. So you are the host of SuperSchool Live. So for folks who don't know what that means, explain that.
So it's really amazing. I'm just here to warm up the audience, but essentially they're a series of writers and they're coming up and presenting these amazing stories about high schoolers across the country. They're well researched and there's graphics, there's video with it. So for example, one will profile a high school where a teacher is having his kids help find clues about a serial killer. So it's really not traditional education. There's one about a young food critic, but he's a critic of his cafeteria high school food. So it's just sort of like seeing the different ways education can take shape to keep kids engaged, not the very traditional, boring education that some of us unfortunately had to suffer through.
And for folks who don't know, of course, XQ America went for a couple of years with this program, Rethink High School, and handed out a significant amount of money for folks who had very creative ideas. Because one of the issues that we've all seen is that the reality is we have a standard way we educate,
Right.
and it is still the same way that it was 150 years ago. And so you have a new type of student, new generation. And so how critically important is it for us to say, hey, you can't have a cookie cutter approach. If you might have 50 different high schools in the system, you might have to have 50 different types of way of teaching as opposed to saying one, replicate.
Right, because absolutely, I think kids, if they're not engaged, they tend to drop out of school. A lot of the smartest kids that I went to high school with were the ones who dropped out, just because they weren't challenged enough. The curriculum was very boring, but I think it's very important. I grew up in a working class immigrant family, and education was always a priority, but in the very archaic, go to school, get A's kind of way. So maybe because I was terrified of my mom, it worked. But for some people, not so much. And my teachers had a huge influence on my life. My career in music journalism would not have happened without them, because I wouldn't have even considered it as a possibility. So I think it's really important that we change it. Kids need to know that there are different careers out there, not just the things that you may see on TV, the very traditional jobs. I think it's very important.
In the 2 years, first of all, you're serving freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, so all 4. What have you seen in terms of growth of these students in 2 years? Give us a sense of how it's changed them and helped them.
So we always start with the students with just social emotional awareness and understanding the ways in which they have been disturbed, understanding how they can process their emotions and regulate, because that's where students are getting kicked out and getting in trouble, especially in these systems that we're talking about. And so seeing the growth in something as small as attendance, and seeing kids come consistently and say, oh, I actually feel safe here. I actually feel like I can ask and seek out adult help. That changes everything, because you can't teach a student until they feel safe and they can learn. And so there's so many disruptions that are happening, and if they don't feel that way, then we can actually access them. I think also, in addition to that, seeing where they can begin to create their own curricular journey. So to your point around how do we kind of tailor the needs to each of the kids, many of our kids know what they need to learn. A lot of our kids are parents. A lot of our kids have to understand a budget. And so when you put that into the math curriculum, you put that into the social studies curriculum to look at, okay, how do you navigate the world? The interest level shoots up, because it's actually things, a lot of them don't have the privilege of just being a student. They also have to be adults. And so kind of thinking about how we listen to kids and leverage student voice allows them to really find a place in the school.
All right.
I would agree with that, and I think once they start to feel safe at school, when they feel like they have multiple adults on campus who they trust, who believe in them, who can support them, then we really start to see the increase in academics as well. And so we have some students who have attended multiple high schools before they land with us and may have earned 0 credits, all Fs for 3 years. They're earning more credits with us over a course of 2 to 3 quarters than they have in their previous 2 to 3 years combined. And then we also do get to see some of the benefits of that socio-emotional growth and the wraparound services. Just today we had a student get off probation. She's been on probation for 5 years, and today her probation was terminated, and so that obviously opens up a whole new pathway for her and her future as well.
Nadeska, this is not the only city y'all are doing this. Where else are you going?
So they've done Tennessee, Chicago is coming up. I believe we'll be out in Seattle and Tacoma, Washington. So there's still a few more exciting stops. Pharrell is doing a music festival in Virginia Beach coming up on April 25th. And XQ is also going to be doing a live show there, which will be really exciting.
All right, then. We surely appreciate it. Continue good luck in all that you're doing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, then. Again, folks, we are here in Los Angeles with XQ America. One of the things that, of course, you often hear us talk about on Roland Martin Unfiltered is how do we impact those in the classroom. For the last couple of years, I have participated in a couple of sessions with Dr. Monica George Fields. She's president and CEO of Reach Educational Solutions, and she spent 31 years in the classroom turning around many troubled schools. And what she says, point blank, it points to leadership, commitment, but also making it perfectly clear to her teachers that she simply will not accept a lower standard. She joins us live right now from New York. Dr. Monica, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing, Roland?
I am doing great. Glad to have you here. First and foremost, so for our audience who's watching, walk them through the school that you took over in New York and how bad of a shape it was in when you took it over.
So I was offered at the time 6 schools, and I wanted to take the school with the most work. The school I took was in Harlem. I had 1,800 students in it. I was the 5th principal in 5 consecutive years. I had 13 self-contained special education classes. I had 81 classes altogether. This is all in one building, so it was really interesting to hear your previous guest talk about 150, 180 students across 2 sites. I had 1,800 students in Harlem. And the ELA and math scores were at 9 and 13%, respectively. So 9% ELA and 13% across the school proficiency rates. And I had over 20 teachers who had not gotten their permanent certification ranging from 15 to 24 years in that building. So they taught between 15 and 24 years with temporary teaching licenses. And I didn't have the opportunity to reconstitute the school. I walked in and I had what I had. I had the 1,800 students, and I had all of their families and all of the teachers who had worked in that school for many years, and all they knew was struggle.
And Monica, you had people who basically told you these children cannot succeed. These are the worst of the worst. So you know what? Let's just do the best job that you can. And your attitude was, I can't accept your idea of failure.
Absolutely. I had people who said, we're just trying to just stay out of the newspaper. We're just trying to make sure that we don't have any incidents in the school as we normally would have. I had the police department perched on the roof of the building, scoping out the crack den that was next door to the school. And they just wanted me to keep the lid on the boiling pot. And I said I couldn't live with that. I grew up in Harlem. As you know, one of my brothers, grew up to be a functional illiterate, and so I knew what that felt like as a sister, as a community member, to have people that I knew that could not read or write and went through the school system, and I just didn't know how to tell a parent that we were producing kids who were more likely to go to jail or die or be single parents or struggle in life rather than kids who are going to have a future. I didn't know how to have that conversation with parents. I didn't want to. And I told my staff, we cannot accept what is going on in this building. We must do something to turn it around.
Um, One of the issues that we also have, obviously, when it comes to education, you're also dealing with bureaucrats and you're dealing with their perspective and you're dealing with what they think as well. How did you also basically manage up? How did you let them know that, look, this is what needs to happen to change the condition of this school, to be able to get these kids to be educated? How did you let them know that you have expectations for them?
I told them point blank, there's a hill that every school leader needs to understand that they may die on. And the hill I was willing to die on was not to allow other people to come into the school and distract us from the work that needed to be done. I had a clear plan for how I was going to improve that school. And anyone who entered that building knew that I had a plan. And if you weren't there to add value, and that's what Reach does. We add value to whatever school building we go into. Then you didn't need to be there. And so I got into tough conversations with my superintendent and assistant superintendents, and I made it very clear that results come from focused, intentional work, not from distractions. And as long as I had a plan and I was working the plan and I got buy-in from my teachers and the families and the staff, I was allowed to do what I needed to do. But I did have a firm foot at the door of not letting just anyone into the building. It was very important that I guarded my school from distractions.
Okay, so you're no longer in the classroom. You have Reach Educational Solutions, and what is? Tell folks what that is and what you're trying to do when it comes to teachers.
So, Reach Educational Solution is an education firm that I started after I was the senior fellow for innovation in New York State, working with John King and Merrill Tisch. And it's a firm that's committed to working with schools, particularly schools that are serving students who are underserviced, underperforming, and struggling schools, around increasing academic achievement. And we do that through supporting, mentoring, coaching teachers in particular and school leaders. We help school leaders and district leaders with strategic plans, action plans, but most of all, we go into the classroom and we coach in, which is what I did in my school. You could find me in the classroom talking to teachers, coaching teachers, professionally developing teachers. No matter how dynamic a school leader is, the bottom line is that they are not in front of all of their students every day, all day. You've got to get to the people who are closest to the students, and those are the teachers, and they need to be developed. The students who are the most struggling have teachers who are who are in need of the most training and the most coaching. And that's what Reach Educational Solution provides to schools, not only in New York, but across the country, in Detroit, in Wisconsin, and other places. And every year we have an annual conference where we encourage people to come and have conversations about what's going on with race, poverty, and the achievement gap. And that's our focus for 2020. Where are we with closing the achievement gap 65 years after Brown versus Board of Education?
And last point, you absolutely believe that the achievement gap can be closed.
Absolutely. I saw it. I saw it happen in my school. I'm not one of these school leaders who's angry because I think people should listen to me, yet I didn't have the results. I actually got the results in my school, in that school where we were at 9 and 13 percentile. When I left that school, that fifth grade graduating class was a 90-90-90 class, 90% minority, 90% Title I, and performing 90% on ELA and math at the state level. And so I absolutely, not only do I believe it, I know it can happen. And we've helped numerous schools actually get their schools off the improvement list and increase academic achievement with our children.
All right. And Monica, so let folks know if they're interested how they can reach you at Reach Educational Solutions.
So they can contact us at reachedsolutions.com. They can join us at our conference, 65 years post Brown versus Board of Education, where we were closing the achievement gap in February 2020. We'll be in Orlando, Florida. If you contact us at the email, we'll send you the information that you need. Or they can follow us on Twitter at ContactUsReach. They can come to our website, www.reachedsolutions.com. There are many ways that they can contact us, and I encourage any school leader, community-based organization, family member who wants really have a conversation about improving academic achievement with our Black and Brown students. Please contact us. Join us for our annual conference in February 2020. And we're there. We will travel. We're a national organization, so we will go to any district, any school. There's no school too large and no school too small for us to make an impact.
All right. Dr. Monica George Fields, I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks. You heard our previous guest talk about wraparound services. You heard Monica talking about closing the achievement gap and how any child can actually be taught, can actually learn. Well, Jeffrey Canada also believes in that. He is the founder of the Harlem Children's Zone. He has worked with the folks here with XQ America from the beginning of their Rethink High School initiative. And here's a video that they put together that I think is important for you to hear from Jeffrey himself.
My mom was always sick. I had to be grown at a young age. I had to pay bills. Teachers in my other schools, they don't know that.
How can Rethinking High School help us achieve a more equitable America?
We're trying to teach all young people as if they come to us from the same starting place. And they don't. It's not fair.
High schools are really, right now, the source and engine of mobility in our society.
We need to prepare all students for the workforce and for college in the 21st century.
Everyone has to care whether our country maintains being a country of opportunity for everyone.
High school is the ticket. It's the golden ticket. If you get it, you have a future. If you miss it, your life chances are greatly diminished.
We really have to think about how do we develop these individuals into adults and what is our responsibility.
School districts with the most students of color have $2,000 less per student to spend than school districts with the most white students.
I used to just go to the back of the classroom, just sit down. Here is like a relationship with a teacher, you know, instead of like do it, it's like, hey, how you doing, you okay?
We should have a zero tolerance for failure and inequity for our schools in this country. We can't start thinking these kids aren't going to make it.
Every young person who walks through this building has been through obstacles that I couldn't even imagine.
America stands for the fact that your talents should take you as far as they can take you. It's possible for us to create those kind of environments in every single community in this country if we decide to do so.
we can equip every student for 21st century success.
All right, we certainly thank Jeffrey Canada for that. Folks, again, let me just go ahead and say this. This is what is critically important. We talk about all kind of stuff all day. If we were talking about Donald Trump or Jussie Smollett or R. Kelly, you know what? A lot of more folks would be tuning in. A lot of more folks would be sitting here commenting. But this is the most fundamental issue facing our community and facing this country as we speak. This is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. We must absolutely care about it, which is why we are focused over the next hour specifically on just this issue of education. We could have talked about, of course, anything else, but we wanted to make sure that we gave it this level of attention as we speak. So got a couple other guests right now. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. How y'all doing?
Good, how are you?
You are?
Monique Pena, Circulos at Santa Ana Unified School District.
My name is Alexis Benitez. I'm a sophomore at Circulos in Santa Ana.
All right, so I'm going to start with you since you are a sophomore. This whole initiative with XQ is about rethinking high school and causing us to think differently. As a high school student, do you see the difference in your classmates when education is approached in a much more creative and innovative way as opposed to what you may have been used to in elementary school, middle school?
Yes, I see the difference a lot. I see that now. I have at my school at Circulos, we have the chance, we have a whole hour where we're able to choose what we want to work on. This is just great because you're independent. You become more independent and more responsible of your work. Yes, we have the amazing teachers that are always like telling us and reminding us what to do. But it's that time where you're able to be responsible and be able to choose what you want to work on. And I just think like from the difference between my high school from my middle school is just before I used to be stuck in a room with a book and with a teacher explaining me stuff. Now I'm able to explore things by myself and question more and go more into detail of what I want to learn.
How do we get parents to care more? Because you look at all these surveys, people always say, oh, education is the number one issue. Every time somebody's running for office, education is the number one issue. Then all of a sudden, you look at who attends PTA meetings, you look at who's showing up for parent-teacher conferences, and people complain, but they're not necessarily there all the time for their kids.
I think one thing that parents can do is just think about like what do they need for their students to be able to be prepared for a 21st century world. So like in order to survive with technology and social media and just everything just kind of flashing at our students on a rapid pace nowadays, what are the skills that our students need in order to navigate that, in order to really survive with the constant changing of times. No longer is education the same where traditional classrooms are really preparing our students for not only college but also for careers as well. And so I think asking parents what is it that they think that their students truly need in order to be successful in a 21st century world, I think is the best way to get them hooked for this.
If you had the ability to craft the curriculum, what would you want to see or how would you want to see it being taught? If you were in power.
Oh.
Yes, a high school sophomore in power.
Oh, there's so many things. Oh my God. I think I would start by saying like I don't know. I actually don't know. There's so many things I could do, but I don't know.
Just start with one.
Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah. If you were in charge of the curriculum, how would you want to see classes being taught? How would you want to see the focus when it comes to education?
I think every kid learns different, and he's just learned. My teacher, Miss Pena, she is always saying like, "Oh, she teaches, but she let us do things in our own." And I think that's something every single teacher should do. And just like the way I think, just by the teachers being more aware of what their students or how the students learn, it's more important of how the kids learn. Because if that kid is comfortable learning with the teacher or learning by themselves, that's where they're gonna learn. Otherwise, they are not gonna learn. So I think it's more of, right now we're using technology a lot, so it's more being aware of what technology, how we're using technology. So at schools it will be like learning how to use and navigating technology correctly, and teachers being aware of what their students are, like how they learn.
Final question for you. As we talk about rethinking high school, but also middle school and elementary school, what do you want to see change?
From top down, right?
Yeah.
That's difficult. There definitely needs to be a lot more policy changes that are going to vertically align, meaning from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. I'm a high school teacher, so it's really easy to say like, oh, my job is to prepare students for college and for career, but I wonder if elementary and middle school teachers are really thinking the same way, right? Do they have that same mindset? If the way in which they're using technology and the skills that they're really building out for their students, is it preparing them not just for maybe like the next grade level or like the next school, middle school or high school, but is what they're doing and implementing in the classrooms, is it really helping our students to be successful in a lot of these like career and college pathways that are going to really help them out? Because some of our students, we had a lot of opportunities even as high school students, and some students are realizing that with Instagram and other social media means, they can have a lot of careers and they can start working as entrepreneurs at such an earlier age. By asking that question, I think it's really helpful.
All right. Well, I certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, folks, we're here for XQ America's SuperSchool, their live initiative. It's actually a program they're actually going to be doing, and so, but this is all about education. This is not about competing charter schools versus traditional schools. No, this is all forms of education, what it means, how it impacts our children, because this is a future. You hear me talk about this all the time. We are 24 years away from America being a nation majority people of color. That means that African Americans, Latinos, Asians, and Native Americans will make up 53% of this country. Yet, if you look at the current stats, the reading stats, the math stats, they are woeful. I was recently in Atlanta for our School Choice is the Black Choice Town Hall event. There was an elementary school in Atlanta, folks, where 5% of the students, this is a black elementary school, 5% of the school's students were reading on grade level. I'm going to repeat that. In Atlanta, the Mecca, elementary school there, black elementary school, 5% of the children were reading on grade level. So you then have to ask the question, what's going to happen when they're in middle school? What's going to happen when they are in high school? Will they ever be able to catch up? Will they ever be able to be on grade level, or will they be consigned for the entire life of being behind? That's something that we all must understand and think about. It is something my next guest deals with all the time. Joining us right now, folks, is Dr. Steve Perry. Very much involved. You've heard him on the show many times. Prominent educator, involved in all sorts of things. He, of course, has several schools now, his own schools in Connecticut, in Harlem. He's aligned himself with Sean Diddy Combs. Also, they're now pursuing a second school. So welcome to this education special of Roland Martin Unfiltered with XQ America. Steve Perry, how you doing, bro?
Thank you so much, Rep and C Prep.
So, Steve, the other day you and I were talking. First of all, you and I talk all the time. We're always talking about education. We're always talking about how we can keep pushing the needle, how we can keep challenging people. And you said something that blew me away because it blew you away, and that is this idea of our kids may stop learning. Explain that, because when we were talking, man, I was like, yo, this is crazy.
This is the most frightening statistic that I've ever seen in education. So we have children in our schools in our school in Harlem who come from all 5 boroughs. So it's not just Harlem; they come from all 5 boroughs. And we start in the 6th grade, and 99% of the children are reading, writing, and doing math below grade level. 99%. You couldn't hit a spot on the wall 9 out of 10 times unless you did it on purpose. You couldn't miss that many times unless you were god awful. So what we found is that those kids are about 2 grade levels below typically. So the 6th graders are coming in at the 4th grade level. What I presumed is that if we took kids in the 7th grade, they'd be at the 5th grade, and at the 8th grade, they'd be at the 6th grade. And we accept children all the way up to the 12th grade. We have schools in Connecticut and in New York. And what we're finding is that there's something that I'm calling stagnation, that there's actually a end point where the children stop learning. So we're taking children in at the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade who have stopped progressing somewhere around the 5th grade. So we're taking in 10th graders who are reading at about the 6th grade, not the 8th grade, which would be consistent with the 2 grade levels behind that we were accepting them at. But they're stagnating. What we're finding is that the longer that they're staying in failed school systems, which are typically the neighborhood schools within which they are zoned, they actually stop learning. It's not that they stop being able to learn, because then what I've also seen, Roland, is that when we pull these students into our school, even the kids that we take in the 12th grade are moving a year to a year and a half in the course of a year. But in the course of their academic experience in the traditional school setting, somewhere along the way between the people who are teaching them and the children themselves, somewhere between them, they've actually stagnated. And they become recalcitrant to the point where 75% of all children who cannot read at grade level by the time they are in the 3rd grade will never read on grade level in their life. What does that look like? What that looks like is a city like Memphis, which is an amazing town in which over 1/3 of the adults are functionally illiterate. What's functionally illiterate mean? It means that if you gave them a cereal box, they couldn't read the ingredients. It means that if you went to church and you asked them to read the morning announcements, they can't read the morning announcements. That's what we're looking at. And I found this accidentally, Roland, as you and I talked about it. I was looking at some of the data from some of our students, and I was thinking that when we accept kids in the 10th grade, they should be reading at the 8th grade level. But most of them were somewhere around the 5th grade. And I thought, well, then if we're taking kids in the 11th grade, they should be reading somewhere around the 9th grade, and they're somewhere around the 6th grade. They stop growing by full grades somewhere around the 5th or 6th grade. They're only growing incrementally. And when I say incrementally, I'm talking about months over the course of years, which is the equivalent of not growing at all. This to me,
Steve, this is the thing. Steve, 1 second. The thing that for me, which is so mind-boggling, is that I'm trying to get people to understand that if that child today is 10, in 24 years, when we're majority nation people of color, they're not going to be 34 years old. They're not going to be in a position to be able to have the kind of jobs we want. Now you talk about the issue of the ability to be able to own a home. Now you talk about the inability to be able to create wealth. And then all of a sudden the cycle continues. And so what is happening literally in classrooms today, which I keep saying in my speeches all across the country, that what is happening in classrooms today is having an impact on their children's children. So this is not a generation issue. This is a generational issue. So not just somebody today, but literally their great-grandkids.
Well, and it's even deeper than that. Those are lofty goals, having a career, owning a home. I'm talking about being able to text. I'm talking about being able to read an article on Yahoo. That's what we're talking about. When we're saying that these children are incapable of reading, that's what we're talking about. When we're saying that they can't do 5th grade math, that means they can't look at a pizza and say that it's half eaten or a quarter eaten. They can't tell you what a fraction is. They can't add 2.4 and 5.7. That's what we're saying adults are not able to do. Adults, because they're in a system where the expectations are so low that we've actually come to the point where people have justified this academic stagnation. What they're saying is, when the kid comes to them in the 7th grade, they're saying, go to where the child is. What that means is that they teach below what the grade level is. So they say, well, how can I teach him algebra if he can't add? Because algebra ain't just adding. It's more than that. Well, how come I teach him Shakespeare if they don't know the words in there? You can teach sight words and you can teach college words simultaneously. Language and learning is not binary. It actually occurs simultaneously. But because the people who were being charged with the opportunity or being blessed with the opportunity to educate our children have lowered their expectations such and justified them by any number of strategies, one of them being because of where they are, where they live, what the economic circumstances are, what their parents' education are. They use that as one form of justification for low expectations. But the implications are real. I'm telling you, Roland, we're not talking about predicting 6 years in the future. I'm talking about right now, there are 12th graders who are 17 to 18 years old who we've accepted, not in Harlem, in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is 24 feet away from 24 feet, a creek, separates us from Fairfield County, or Fairfield, which is one of the wealthiest towns in America. 24 feet. I have 12th graders who are reading at the 6th grade level. 6th grade level. That means that they couldn't read the New York Times or the Washington Post and tell you what the article was about. That's what we're dealing with right now. Those are the kids that we have right now, right at this very moment.
Now your 5th school?
In 2020, we'll open a school in the Bronx. And the district that we're opening the school in the Bronx is the poorest congressional district in the United States of America. So challenging is this community that when we were approved by the regents, the authorizer in the state of New York, one of the regents said, you're going to need more than we can give you. Even the state acknowledges it's that bad. The state said that on record. That's where we are. Folks, we have crossed over. We're in a whole different place now. This is not about charters versus magnets versus traditional schools. It's a wrap. We are in a place where academically and social-emotionally, our children are so far behind. When I say ours, I'm talking about Black and Latino kids. They're so far behind that we're going to have to find strategies that are so drastic that none of us are going to feel comfortable with how much it's going to upset the apple cart.
Dr. Steve Perry, man, always good talking with you. Keep handling your business and educating the next generation, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, bud. Take care.
All right, folks, joining us right now here in Los Angeles for the XQ America live event here is the CEO, Ruslan Ali, of course. You might remember her working for the Department of Education. When she came on my Washington Watch show, she said I was too tough on her. But she was used to talking to those people who don't send their kids to public school on traditional television shows. So it's a little different. And also the Chief Strategy and Creative Officer, Mark Echo, as well. Hey, how we doing?
Hello, hello.
All right, glad to be here.
Glad to have you.
It's great that you came here for us, and this is amazing. Yeah. And look at how I'm just watching you quarterbacking all of this.
Well, you know,
this is you talk about the future of media.
Yeah. Well, so the deal is,
studio, man,
so I'm in. So they're talking to me back at the studio. So I'm actually connected via Skype right here.
It's unbelievable
on that phone.
It's amazing.
And so we're tweeting, and I'm also watching the different streams, and people are commenting right now on all the different platforms.
I love it.
And so it's all good. But let's talk about this event. Let's talk about XQ.
And we can talk about you and being hard on me or not hard on me.
No, I'm trying to tell y'all. It was so funny because Ruslan was like, when it was done, she was like, okay, you would not let me off the hook. She said, you will push it hard. I'm like, that's right.
That's right. That's right. But it was good stuff.
It was.
Because then when I was Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights for President Barack Obama, we were pushing hard on doing what was right for poor kids and kids of color in our country. And
so
that's what we're trying to do now, too.
You left the administration, came to Emerson Collective. Tell folks, how did XQ start?
Well, we started with the notion that we have to do something to help kids in our country, right? We started with the data. We look and we saw, Roland, you know this better than most, African-American, Latino 12th graders reading and doing math at the level of white 8th graders in our country. Every country developed and developing, outperforming all of our kids. So we started with knowing we had a big problem and how to solve it. We also, though, knew that we didn't have all the answers, that community would have the answers. Mm-hmm. So Lorena and I founded XQ on the notion that we were best as a country when we come together to solve big problems, that communities knew what they needed for their schools, and that an empowered community could design a school of the future. What we didn't expect was 10,000 people from across the country would come and join us. And together, we have developed out 19 models. We have a few states on the way, some districts, and we're really looking at showing what high school can look like for the planet moving forward.
And when we started with this idea of Rethink High School,
Yes.
some people were going, this sounds sort of fishy. And it wasn't about tearing schools down. It wasn't about tearing teachers down.
Of course not.
But it was about forcing people to say, you can do this thing differently.
Yes.
You don't have to keep doing it
Yes.
the same way.
Yes.
And you can actually make it interesting and fun and be effective.
That's right. It was also learning from other industries. High schools have only been transformed twice in our entire country's history, after the War of 1812 and then again in the early 1900s. They have not kept pace with every other industry that has transformed and met the needs of a new society. It's about time high schools did as well.
Mark, when we met in Oakland, we were talking about this idea, and then you sent me this email, and I reference it in my speeches when I'm talking to people. So for the folks who don't know, so explain to them the information you sent me about Carnegie.
Yeah.
That literally explains exactly how we got to where we are now, and the problem that we're still doing it today the same way this guy laid it out in the 1800s.
That's right. Well, in the late 1800s, there was a gentleman by the name of Charles Eliot, who was an ed reformer of his time, of his day, who went on later on to become the president of Harvard, right? And in the top of the 1900s, when all of the secondary education, like colleges, were emerging all around the country, and Carnegie, being a guy who wanted like quality control, was like, how do we organize this system so that we have some mechanism of quality control, effectively, right? How do we create like quality control mechanism within our school systems? So it started actually in the college space, and they came up with this notion of seat time, right? The idea was, all right, well, we're going to incentivize the educators themselves at Harvard by writing. Carnegie wrote like a $10 million check, I think, at the time. Yeah.
What is now TIAA CREF.
Yeah. So he creates this incentive to say, hey, if you're an educator at Harvard, you could be eligible for this portion of this for tenure if you adopt this system that's going to organize how we organize the kids and measure the kids in terms of the student hour and seat time. And the problem with this is, at the time, it was a brilliant idea in terms of how we organize time and space, the day, all of these things. And there's been a
what most folks don't realize is that, at that period, first of all, you're talking about 30 years after the end of the Civil War.
That's right.
Then you had, first of all, not a lot of white kids were going to going to school. In fact, in James D. Anderson's book, The Education of Blacks in the South, 1860 to 1935, he talks about that in Memphis, 92% of the black kids were going to in schools, while 41% of the white kids in D.C. were going to school.
Yeah.
And so as we began to move away from the Civil War, and then you talk about the Industrial Revolution, folks began to realize we needed an educated populace.
That's right.
Because poor whites and freed slaves, folks were not educated. It was really for well-to-do people.
Right. That's right.
That's right.
So this system came to bear, and
But at the time, to Roland's point, you had about 11,000 high schools in the country. No clear, some were doing farming, some were doing Latin, some were trying to do business. There was no clear articulation between the exit requirements of high school and the entry requirements of college. The system was in disorder. So what Carnegie brought was a real order to how we teach.
And when you say order, it was literally how desks are lines up, the process, raise your hand, you have a question, chalkboard.
We're so close to it. We're on the gerbil wheel. Like, we don't even know to think of it in a different way. That's how we say school, and automatically you get this image of the structure of the day, the summer, all of these things. And a part of why I wanted to join XQ is when I asked Russell, I was like, okay, what's the moonshot? She's like, is there a way to get to contemplate reimagining or completely rethinking the Carnegie unit? And that was I was so keen on that, because they got right to the systemic issue of like, all right, what is the thing that sort of unintentionally, 100 years later, I mean, it helped organize us for the better part of the last century, but the unintended consequences is now it's constraining us.
Right.
So these design constraints
choking us.
Of the past, it's like, look at you quarterbacking your studio here. Like, our educational system is not like every other industry has migrated to suit us for our future needs. It's been more nimble, more portable. Our educational system, with good intentions, like this is not an indictment on this part of our history, but it is time to say, well, what if the summer was 1 month and 3 times a year instead of 3 months and once a year? What if the day started at this hour of the day? What if people really got involved with their school boards in a way that they're not even contemplating? 8% of LA, only 8% of LA turned out for school board elections. 8%,
right.
Okay, they don't even know who serves on the school boards.
$90 million annual budget.
That's right.
And 8% of the constituency turned out.
$90
million annually, just $8 billion writ large, just in retirement funds, right? I mean, this is a complicated system, and 8% of the people turn out to even vote on how to spend the dollars for poor kids.
From a civic engagement point of view, there's a lot of opportunity to make this entryway, like education, the entryway for civic, because when you actually think about like other elected officials, there's actually a lot to be done at the school board level to shape your community, and people just don't. They're just not alert on it.
So the reason this is so interesting to me, and you talk about how we totally think old way and new way. So I go back. I'm in Houston several years ago, and I go by my high school, Jack Yates High School, and I got some problems. And so I'm giving a speech to the black MBAs in Houston, and I basically put them on blast. And I say, I'm going to use my platforms, unless they fix it, to put the entire district on blast. Mm-hmm. Well, unbeknownst to me, at the event was HISD, Houston Independent School District, had a table there. And there was a board member who was at the table, and my aunt was also a principal. They were all there, and so they sort of like lowered their sign, like, okay, we don't want anybody to know this is HISD table. And so literally 2 weeks later, I'm back at my high school in a meeting with the superintendent, the board president, the board member for that area, the chief academic officer. They brought all the principal, like the top leadership, just to meet with me. So they come in, so they give me, we have our basketball team has won 4 state titles in the last 6 years. So they give me a signed basketball, all this, and I'm like, y'all, I ain't here for all this. Mm-hmm. I got signed basketballs. Let's get down talking. So they present me this proposal, and we had school communications there. So as we're sitting there, and they're talking, and they're talking about, hey, $65,000 for a low power antenna because we have a radio station on school communications, and it's like all this stuff. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, y'all are having literally a 1980s discussion about the school of communications. Yes. And so I go through this plan. It's like 20 pages, and I go through it in about 90 seconds. And I read it all 90 seconds, and I just start obliterating the plan. Yeah. And then finally the superintendent goes, why don't we do this here? Why don't we close this plan and have Roland tell us what he thinks? Mm-hmm. And then I go, good idea. Let me bring y'all present day. The hell with the tower. You can live stream a radio show online. That's right. You don't have to spend $65,000. So we just start going through it. And I said, everything that y'all just laid out, we don't use anymore. Right. I said, you're talking about this camera here when this camera here costs this. And so we start going through these things. And then when I went back, so they changed a lot of stuff. When I'm back, and I did my show, my TV1 show from my high school. They literally had a system that the school had to spend about $5,000 to live stream. Mm-hmm. When I have a box that's $600. Right.
But you see how...
and I go, y'all are spending $5,000 for one system when I'm doing the exact same thing with a box for $600. What the hell are you doing? And they were like, and I said, don't you know that that's $400 that can go to something else, but you're forcing the school to use only one system to stream.
Right.
And I was like, you're stuck.
That's right. That's
and
right.
I said, you got to be unstuck.
But how do you unstick? So what we're here tonight for, right? Change of the magnitude that we are talking about, Roland, as you know more than most, it requires a cultural shift.
Right.
We have to change the way, the paradigm in which schools work, how we as a country prioritize it. We have to make them a movement. Yep. So one of Mark, as you know, had been a board member of XQ from the beginning, but he's a brand maker, right? Yep. This is complex media. This is eco-urban fashion. So the partnership here is how do we take these incredibly complicated, wonky, siloed systems, right? and make them palpable and digestible
And
for
accessible.
a country to participate.
Right.
That insight
Exactly.
that you just shared right there, for instance, it's like, think about like that school, the person who was planning that budget wasn't, maybe let's give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe wasn't even ill-intended, but it takes community members that are entrepreneurial, that are coming from other sectors to realize that, oh, if I'm going to shape what's around me, I could engage, like that insight. You didn't need to serve as a board member to give them that insight that was instantly
I'm a
valuable.
graduate.
Right. That's right.
So
I care about the
who are they going to
school.
hire?
That's
A
right.
consultant to do that? So the point is like, how do we activate more people out there to say, you know what? I can't necessarily run, but I'm just going to show up.
Right.
Just show up to the board. Do you know who serves on your school board meeting? Who serves on your school board?
There you go.
Right, so we have a big, if you go to our website, xqinstitute.org, you'll see we have a big initiative. One of our tools is we call it That's a School Board Thing, but we're trying to make this mainstream. How do we make this, I mean, forgive my language, but sexy? Like we have to get people really hot about
If you want
this.
to know about a school board, you have to go specifically to that district. You would
Right.
have to know that district's website, how to search on
Right.
it. So we made a tool that you can just input your zip code.
Right.
And get information
You
about
could look
what's
it up. It's the
happening in
first
your
of its kind
schools,
national
right?
tool set. That's
Well,
right.
this is, and the reason I'm excited about this is because what you're describing is what I've always done on my platforms.
Yeah.
Is getting people to understand you can't focus on DC. You can't focus.
No.
Look, Betsy DeVos is the Secretary of Education, but the reality is that school board, trust me, if 30 people
That's right.
show up at a school board meeting in
You could change a
consecutive
lot.
months,
Right.
You could
That's
change a
right.
lot.
That's right.
it's going to scare the hell out
Oh
of
my
every
gosh.
board member.
That's right.
Because they're not used to 30 people showing up.
That's right.
And I've said this to AKAs, to alphas, to deltas, non-Greek. I'm like, do y'all understand? I said, what happened if just take the black fraternity sororities. I said, if the deltas say, we going to take October, you take November, we take January, they're going to be like, okay, I don't know what the hell's going on, but why are there these people here?
$600 billion. School boards spend $600 billion
Yes,
annually.
the vast majority proportion of funding is managed through school board
9
oversight.
cents on the dollar.
And then when you start to think about in some districts, like we're going to be in Chicago together. Some places, though, unfortunately, like we're sitting here for people in some communities out there, the school board's appointed.
Yes.
Right.
So you can't even,
Right.
it's not even a
Right.
elected
They're
thing.
supported. Mayor controls the schools.
Yeah, so
I'm from
some,
Houston.
yeah,
It's
like
elected.
in Chicago.
But-
So just giving people these insights, and there's a lot of difference we can make, and we don't have to wait on DC to figure this out.
Well, look, we appreciate it. People, I mean, I'm looking at the comments and everything right here. Folks are commenting, and we're going to keep pushing this thing. And again, as you say, make it sexy.
Yeah.
Because, again, this is generational.
That's right.
This is literally, it's a generational thing. And again, I don't have children biologically. I've raised my nieces, but this is how we can change together.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank
I
you for
appreciate
being
it.
here tonight.
All right.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
a bunch.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to the audience, too.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Again, we are busy talking about all this sort of stuff, talking about education. But when we talk about politically, I'm pulling some things up here as well. Because in a second, I'm going to talk to the great supermodel Naomi Campbell about why she's here. Right now, though, I want to go to what is happening academically here. Let me know, folks. Do we have our folks ready? Tiffany Lofton, do we have them ready? Say it again. All right, so folks, so let's now talk about education policy. This week, we saw Donald Trump release his budget, massive cuts across all departments, including the Department of Education. The question is, how will that impact our children? Tiffany Lofton, she, of course, is over the youth and college division of the NAACP. She joins us right now. Tiffany, how you doing?
Hey, Roland. How you doing on the West Coast?
I know you're upset because you don't like missing great parties. It's a great event here in Los Angeles, and so you're always in LA. If y'all follow Tiffany on Instagram, she's usually doing yoga headstands in India or Thailand or in LA. So she's never here. So the fact that we actually have her on the show is shocking. But Tiffany, let's get down to business. We see massive cuts being proposed by Donald Trump. in its education budget, and it is illogical to me that we have spent an additional $700 billion on defense. In this budget, there's another increase on defense. And how can we say we're going to compete with the rest of the world when we're simply building planes, building bombs, building tanks, and more money for the military, and we're cutting education? That, to me, is irrational, and it's insane.
Absolutely, Roland. We can't. The answer is that we can't. If Donald Trump continues to go in this direction, which we know from his track record, from his campaign route that he will, that he has no indication whatsoever, by simple evidence that he picked Betsy DeVos to be Secretary of Education, who has no experience whatsoever of not only running a government agency, but being a part of a public education system. She, back in November of this past year, she made really important and different regulations to Title IX policy. Over 100,000 people across the country wrote comments just on her regulations alone and the proposal that she had. 70 national school associations were like, we're not doing this. We don't like your regulation proposal that you're putting up forward, and you have to make sure that you do not do what you're doing, and you have to respond to every comment that we put up. And so now the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education, led by Betsy DeVos, who was chosen by Donald Trump, who is defunding education. That entire cycle is intentional, Roland. So the effort that they have to continue to increase mass incarceration, prisons in this country, and the national defense, and not provide support for access and affordability for higher education for K through 12 is not surprising. However, the people in this position, Roland, as you know and as I know, we have the power to make the change, right? It is up to us to be able to push back, to speak up, to show up like you guys were talking about a few minutes ago, to school board meetings, to show up to the principal's office. Roland, just this month alone, just in February and this month alone, at Western Virginia University, at Florida State University, at Georgetown University, and at Eastern Michigan, they had hate crimes that took place on their campus where white students were hanging nooses at the school. So in addition to tuition skyrocketing, I just did a press conference last week with Congressman from Hawaii, Congressman Schultz, about the Free College Education Act to make sure that students can afford college. From racism to college affordability to Betsy DeVos and her stupid regulations, education right now is in big trouble. And if people don't pay attention to what happens at the D.C. national level, then they can't make change on the local level.
Tiffany, we also saw students yesterday and today marching for climate change, but also we've got to see students also marching for their education. I certainly agree with gun control. I certainly agree with climate change, but there has to be massive changes to how kids are being taught and learning today.
Absolutely. And talking what they're learning today, and as it was mentioned earlier, the education system has only been reformed 2 times in our history as a country, and not ever recently have we taken a serious look at not only the pieces that you just mentioned around the safety and the cost and affordability of school, but also the curriculum of what our students are focusing on. It is a continuous complaint and conversation, but I'll say this, Roland, for folks who think that young people and students are apathetic, not only did we have the Environmental Justice March, but in New Jersey and in Texas, our students were doing sit-ins into the principal and the chairman's office to make sure that they actually responded to their demands and their issues that they cared so deeply about. Here's what I will say. I've told in my job, I work with students across the country. At the end of the day, the students and our parents and those families that represent those students who are on the campus and at the school are the most important stakeholders in the university or on that school. If the students don't want it, they outnumber and make the most power up of the stakeholders in the university and of the school system. So if we don't want something, it takes all of us to say at one time, we don't want it. And whatever it is that we do want, it has to happen in return. That happened when I was at school. Somebody hung a noose at my school at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and we had all the students of color say, we're not having it, we're not doing it. We shut the school down, and within 2 weeks, We were able to get Black housing. We were able to rehire Black faculty on campus, and we were able to work on getting ethnic studies. The students in this position actually have the power. You saw across the country today about environmental justice. That wasn't college students. Those were high school students who led that march, Roland. So I look forward to us continuing to do that work. And the elections are happening this year, and young people are going to show up in the elections too. So Congress, government, and Donald Trump better be scared.
Tiffany Lofton, NAACP. Always good to have you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland. Have fun. I'll see you later.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, folks, time for us to welcome another guest here in Los Angeles for the XQ America live initiative. And so it's going to be starting in just a few minutes. So we want to talk education with someone who you probably would say, wait a minute, what? Naomi Campbell cares about ed reform? Well, yes, that's the whole point here. It doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter if you're a parent, if you're not. The reality is we're going to be hiring people, and so we have to have quality students who are coming out of schools. And so we're certainly happy to be joined here on Roland Martin Unfiltered by Naomi Campbell. How are you?
I'm good, Roland. Thank you.
It's good to see you.
You too.
Why is this issue important to you?
Well, because I think high school is very important. It sets the foundation for the rest of your life, for your communities, for world young leaders. And so, you've got your early grades, which are also great, but then you get to high school and you kind of see that the policy, and it's a little old-fashioned. It's very industrial. It needs to change with the times. It needs to be more modernized. It needs to see what's going on around the world. And therefore, then it sets the student. I'm not saying that educators aren't right. It sets the tone for what the future is and what's going on in the world today. I believe in what HQ is doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I think it's a great foundation for re-imaging the policy of high schools and what education should be and what people should be learning and getting taught.
When you were in high school,
yes,
were you like, oh my God, this is driving me crazy, this is boring, this is nuts? And I hear that from a lot of students, and part of the deal is folks have to stay engaged, and if it's the same old, people will check out.
I have to tell you, Roland, I loved school. I loved going to school. I loved wearing uniform. I looked forward to going to school. It was, for me, education is freedom.
Oh, I did too. But some of it was boring.
Some of it was boring, but some of it was boring then. But
right.
Now when we look back at it, it wasn't boring. I'm happy that I learned and took in all that I did. It was important.
When we talk about the sameness, that's also, I think, for me, the fundamental problem in this country in terms of this cookie-cutter model and the idea of being able to learn different ways. You've been a model for a period of time.
33 years.
And the reality, say it again?
33 years.
And the reality is, you work under different people who have different systems.
Correct, and different education in different parts of the world.
And it doesn't mean that that's wrong, but all of those different systems help you to be where you are now.
Correct.
And for me, education is sort of the same way. One school doesn't have to be the same as the other.
No, it needs to change with the times. Change is important. There's different curriculums that come in that needs to be accepted and embraced and taught to the students so that they can keep up with what's going on in the world today. For me, I find it, when someone comes up to me and says to me, Naomi, you were in Africa last week. Do they speak the same language in Africa? I'm like quite surprised and stunned.
Like, first, it's a continent, not a country.
It's a continent, yes. And then they're asking me if they speak the same language. No, there's Swahili, there's Afrikaans, there's so many different dialects, plus the tribal dialects. All of this, we should know this. We should be updated. Basically, it needs to be updated.
How do you also tell other individuals who have platforms, who are prominent, who are celebrities, who are successful, that they have to also use their voice? Because, again, even if they don't have children, they're going to be hiring the folks who are going through these systems.
Absolutely. I look at it this way. We are all a work in progress. And there's never a day where I don't want to learn something, and we should always look in that way of life. And I feel that, yes, we do need to use our voices. I was told by the great President, late Nelson Mandela, to use my voice. I didn't understand it 23 years old. I understand it now, to help and make awareness of other things that you feel passionate about. And HQ is something I feel passionate about.
Well, same here. I think we can have a tremendous impact. It's just a matter of more people caring enough. So we really appreciate you doing also. But before you go, you talk about what you're working on YouTube.
Oh, my YouTube.
Yes, I did. Yes, I got it.
I have a channel that I started called Being Naomi. And basically, it was my way of just... I needed to give back to show what I do in my life daily. So this is the way I chose to do it.
And so
I have control of it, and I just get to let people come into my life and see. People think our lives is just glamorous. We just get in front of the camera and that's it. No, I just crossed 4 continents in a week.
Wow.
So yeah, I went Africa, Asia, France, London, here, and I don't mind. I don't mind at all. When it's for something good, like I speak in it for the Forbes Africa for the Women Summit. It's what I want to do. So yes, I love modeling. It's been amazing to me, and it still is amazing to me. But there's also the other side that I love, that I'm able to get out there and speak for those that are not able to have a voice.
Well, we certainly appreciate you using your voice.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with that. And so we're going to do this here, folks. And so people are going to be around here running for selfies and stuff. But see, the problem is they got bad light. And being in television and being in modeling, she understands good light. So we're going to get us a selfie with good light. So let's sit here. Here we go. All right, then here. All right, we're going to do it right over here. So that's how we do it. So you got to always get the good light. I appreciate it. Good to meet you as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
All right, folks. Again, the great Naomi Campbell. Glad to have her here as well. Folks, we started this off, and I see... Yes, who we got? Huh? I can't hear you. Okay. And also, do I see Mara over there? Tell Mara to get over here. Tell Mara come over here. Yes. Come on in. Of course, many of y'all, Don, how you doing? It's good seeing you.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you. Many of you, of course, know Don Robinson from, of course, A Different World. Education show, kind of important.
There you go, kind of important.
Let's talk about that. First of all, I'm going to go back. The number of people who were impacted in school, whether it was college, whether it was high school, by that show, was important.
And the fact that it's still on, what's this, 31 years, 32 years later, and it's still on multiple times a day around the planet, that speaks to the content and the quality. So I'm really honored to be a part of that legacy.
And the thing about it, again, it wasn't just what was happening off campus. It talked about how critically important education was.
Exactly.
And so every week, you literally had a show where education was at the center of plot lines.
Of the plot line. Education, giving back and being in service to your community and to each other as human beings, because none of us are perfect. So each of us had flaws on the show. My character, Jaleesa, she was clearly perfect. But she was clearly perfect, clearly educated. It was everyone else who needed to come up. No. All of us had our own thing going on. So one at a time, each of us was there to support each other as well as do what we could to get through to the better stage of where we had to be.
All right, I want to bring in someone right now. First of all, here's the problem. She doesn't check her phone because about 50 minutes ago, I saw her out the corner of my eye. Sent her a text, hey, what's going on?
In school, they teach
and of
you
course,
not to do this.
No response.
It's very rude.
No response whatsoever.
I was chatting.
And so when Dale brings her over, she sees me because she goes, oh my God. I'm like, she ain't check her phone. Because had he checked the phone, she would have known I was sitting over here for the past hour.
No, but we are all here engaged in the reason why we're here.
You know I love me some Roland.
You know I had to go
and
ahead
you know what I
you.
love, because he echoes the message that Salim, I want to give it a lot of props to my husband Salim through Black Lightning, which is all about if we're going to change. Thank you. If we're going to change tomorrow, we have to invest in these children and education. And you were there for us. I want to say thank you. And look where you are tonight. You are always where it should be. Thinking about tomorrow, thinking about the future. So, hi, Roland.
How you doing? Well, I appreciate it, especially when he sent me those residual checks for being on Black Lightning. I was like, damn, okay, cool. I'm like, we got extra stuff.
See, when you're educated, you get paid.
See, we got extra stuff. Even in writing shows, creating shows, developing shows, things along those lines, education is central. And it's amazing to me when people say, I want to do what you do. No, but you need to do what I did.
Ooh, you said a word.
Yes.
You said a word. And I think, because we have such access so quickly, people think things are quick. And Dawn, you're not an overnight success. I am not an overnight success. Exactly. Roland, you are not an overnight success. It takes investment, and the investment starts at I would imagine if we interviewed each other, we all know that there was, in our families, education was the tent pole about how we were going to reach any dream, any goal. Right. And so, so it's in my DNA, Roland. So if I'm going to write, it's going to come out in that as well, in my characters.
Education and being willing to put in the work.
Yes.
You got to be willing to put in the work. People, they see where we are. They think that you landed here. They think that you just started right here. And that couldn't be further from the truth. An overnight success doesn't happen overnight.
I think the joy, though, is finding the purpose. I think we're losing the art of looking for and the connecting of who you are and what your role is in society. I think that we are moving so quickly, and the idea of success, whatever success means, and there's only typically one or two models of that. I think we're losing the art of helping children and even helping adults, because we don't always get it right the first pass or two, to find out there's another type of education, and it's also a human, spiritual connection of education about how to find that path and to guide children, which I really love about this program. I'm excited about tonight, because it's thinking differently about how we can connect to children. Everyone doesn't learn the same way. Right. Everybody's path and goal and success is not the same. So
you mentioned art. And I wanted Debbie Allen to join me over here. She's on the set with Grey's Anatomy all day. And she has been on my show in the past, and she's talked about, again, how critically important art is in schools. And both of you in the arts, whether it's also acting, singing, writing, producing, I explain to people all the time that what I do is so funny. Mark was here. He was like, oh, my, to see you sitting here quarterbacking where you got 3 different phones going and you're on. I said, yeah, but I actually learned that in band.
There you go.
And so the problem for me, and I look at it with my nieces and nephews, they did not have the same easy access to music as I did. And so being able to train that creative mind helped in terms of what I do here. And that, to me, is what drives me crazy today, that literally we have a generation and another generation, and we have another generation of children who will not have ready access to music, to dance, to drama, all of those artistic things, which also are critically important to the education and academic development.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly, unless they belong to some specific charter group or some special group
or an external program, but not something that is literally built into the curriculum.
Into the curriculum, I agree.
Well, creativity is a part of the learning experience.
Right.
Accessing your imagination, even with numbers.
Exactly.
To think, because there's more than one way to solve a math problem, actually.
Exactly.
And we're not
I didn't figure out any of the ways to solve it. Math was not my thing. I told him, I said, look, I can count money and I can negotiate. I don't know nothing about no Pythagorean theorem.
No, but one thing about the arts, it encourages you to tap into what you are good at and what you can excel in, and then you can apply those theories and those behaviors to all other aspects of your life. And you can become a better English student, become a better math student, because you got to know how to count to play music.
Yeah, I just think what we've done is we've changed this whole model now where it's all, these are the core classes, and I'm sorry, the arts has to be part of the core class. That's why some people talk about STEAM. They talk about STEM. They say no, STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art and
mathematics. I agree.
And so, well, look, this
that's
program
where innovation is. Yeah, that's where innovation is a lot. It's the intersection of those.
This program is about to start real quick. What are you working on? You got anything you want to shout out?
Yes, they added me to the cast of Veronica Mars. They did a reboot.
Oh,
so Kristen Bell, the whole original cast, has come back. They've added me to the cast. I also
have
a
black
film.
friend?
No, I'm the chief of police. I'm the chief of police. And what else? Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Got a reboot. So I play the chief, and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. Got a film, The Revival, coming out for Easter, and start work on a new musical, Thoroughly Modern Millie.
All right, cool.
And my nonprofit organization doing just what you're talking about, the arts and financial literacy and technology for at-risk youth.
Love it.
So I got
Wonderful.
a full plate.
She had a
What you
lot
got?
to say. Black Lightning's coming back for third season. I'm really excited about that. And woodshedding. Part of the creative process is the ebb and flow, and I'm in the woodshed, coming up with new ideas. I can't speak on them now, but I'm really excited about
We
them.
know it's going to be phenomenal.
It's going to be amazing.
You did some phenomenal stuff.
And she's
Mara
she's also working on a show of a television host who rocks ascots. We're going to tell you about
Okay,
that
yeah,
later.
tell that later.
Tell you about that right now.
Let's go find out XQ. Okay, bye.
Don, Mara, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Thank
Good
you.
seeing you.
Good seeing you.
All right, folks, we are about to wrap this thing up here at XQ America. But before we do that, I want to play this video here. Of course, I told you last week I was at the Friendship Public Charter School Teacher of the Year event. We showed the Teacher of the Year on Monday, but we wanted to be able to show you one of the other finalists. And this is important because, again, we want to show you and elevate teachers. So I'm going to play this for you, then I'm going to come back, my final thoughts.
What is theme again? A life lesson. I love watching student engagement. I love discourse. I love when they find things out on their own without me having to feed it to them. I want students to know that it's okay to be you. Build your confidence around who you are. Discover who you are. It's okay to make mistakes and to find your purpose.
One more, and you need prior knowledge.
Miss Epps has helped me through so much during my time with her. Everybody should know the name Miss Epps. You know, the name that brightens up a room or the name that brings joy to anybody.
When she walks in the classroom, I mean, the students absolutely love her class because she makes a personal connection with every student. She's radiant.
I want to
This is not her profession. This is her calling, and she teaches to the whole child. It's about increasing student voice, and that's something that Ms. Epps always says. This is your classroom, so you have to learn how to advocate for yourself.
How did you get to that? Not that it's wrong, but I want to know your thought process.
She's helped me to become more well-rounded and organized, so like now I'm able to juggle having fun and being able to like maintain as an honor roll student. She makes me feel like college is for me.
I've never heard her refer to the kids here as her students. She always says, you know, Mr. Boyd, my kids, my children. Just the fact that my son says that that's his other mother, she's not just another parent to me, she's also my partner.
I am the mom. I am. It just comes out of me. I come here so that I can guide, direct, and lead in the right direction. I don't want accolades. I don't want to be in the spotlight. I do it because it's in my heart to do. I love children. I love people. So that is my purpose. That's my passion, is to help somebody. So that is why I do what I do. That's what I exactly want to see. Good job. Y'all doing a good job over here.
All right, folks, we have had a great last hour and a half or so of this XQ America special with Roland Martin Unfiltered, focusing on the issue of education. We're going to be live streaming several more of these events over the next several months. And as you heard Mark and Rustin talk about, their initiative to get people involved in their local school boards. Here are my final thoughts, and this is critically important. We talk about a lot of things in our society. When we look at various websites, we will talk about, I was on social media today and people were commenting about a video of the late Dr. Maya Angelou on the Sally Jesse Raphael show and how she responded to a 14-year-old. Folks were sitting here going back and forth. Lots of people talking about R. Kelly and Jussie Smollett, talking about the latest thing Donald Trump said. And we could go on and on and on. We can go on and on and on how we in our community, but also in this society, will talk all day about what's happening with celebrities. We're here in Los Angeles, and it's also about what's happening with celebrities. But the reality is this here. When we start bringing up things like education, folks go silent. Oh, I can look at right now the number of people who are watching our live stream on YouTube and on Facebook and Periscope. And they'll say, okay, I got other things I want to do. But the reality is this here. Our community is greatly impacted by what is happening in the classrooms. I started off talking about, in some areas, African-American children, 5%. You heard Steve Perry on this show saying 99% failure rate in terms of reading below grade level. The same thing when it comes to math. Many of our children being 2 and 3 grade levels behind. We can talk about all kinds of stuff. We can talk about what's happening with police brutality. We can talk about what's happening when it comes to public policy in Washington, D.C. We can talk about all sorts of things, gentrification, all those things. But the reality is this here. What we know as African Americans since slavery, matter of fact, take it before slavery and go back to the motherland, and that is we've always understood the value of education and what it means. And somebody can sit here and discriminate against you, and they can racially profile you, and they can sit here and target you. What they can never take away is what is in your mind. Chuck D, founder of Public Enemy, always talks about that real estate in America, pretty much there's not much land left. But what can never be sold is what is between both of your ears. We, as African Americans, must have a completely different attitude when it comes to education. We must begin to challenge people in a different way. We must begin to say to our nieces and our nephews and our sons and our daughters and our cousins that you are going to get an education whether you like it or not. And if there's a problem in the school, we're going to show up. If there's a problem with the school board, we are going to show up. If there's an issue with a teacher, we're going to show up. And if there are folks who are doing their job, we're going to praise them for doing so. There must be not moments we care about, but as Ruslan Ali said, this must be a movement. This must be something that we give a damn about. This must be something that we are willing to challenge anybody, whether they are black, whether they are white or Latino or Asian or Native American, whether they are rich, whether they are middle class or whether they are poor. We must be willing to stand up for our children and our children's children, and we must be willing to stand up for our nieces and nephews and cousins. It doesn't matter who they are, and church members and neighbors. If we talk about the future of Black America, there is nothing that will change for Black America unless we change what is happening with education. When my wife and I were raising my 6 nieces, if we were in that car longer than 10 minutes, they understood they had to be reading. The DVD player in my Navigator, it wasn't playing movies, it was playing educational videos. They were immersed in 24-hour education, and that must be how we approach this. We cannot continue to allow our children to go through elementary school and middle school and high school not learning. Go to any prison, I will show you 90% of the people there are illiterate. That's how you understand what is happening with education. And so we will be focused on this with XQ America over the next several months, and we want you to be involved. Share this video on Periscope. Share this video on Facebook. Share this video on YouTube, because if we do not fight for our children, trust me, ain't no Calvary out there coming that's going to fight for our kids. This is about us and for us. Certainly want to appreciate everybody with XQ America for making this possible. All of our guests for being here as well. All of the folks back in D.C. with Roland Martin Unfiltered. We, of course, had the Erica Ash interview earlier, and we thank you for watching this as well. We're going to be restreaming this over the weekend as well. Again, share this with your friends. Put it on your Facebook page, your Twitter account, on your Instagram, because we need to make sure that we are letting folks know what's going on here. For everybody here in Los Angeles, we thank you so very much. We will see you guys this weekend. Don't forget, this weekend we'll also begin live streaming the Black Women's Roundtable Conference in Washington, D.C. tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday as well. All right, folks, I got to go. Y'all have an absolutely great evening. Holla!